Ever think of where your food comes from? You might not know it, but your food probably has more frequent flyer miles than you do. On average, each item of food you eat travels 1,500 miles to reach your plate. The food industry is a huge contributor to climate change. Carbon emissions from production, transportation, and distribution is estimated to make up 9 to 20% of total U.S. carbon emissions. Of Cheverly, Maryland, is one of a growing number of local food champions. She founded a market in her community in 2007.
I grew up in Colorado. I remember always eating local food growing up, and in Cheverly we just don't have access to local good food. We're just kind of a food desert here.
One Farm at the Market is part of a community-supported agriculture program, or CSA. CSA is a local food movement that originated in Germany in the 1960s.
So with community-supported agriculture, members join the farm as shareholders essentially, and they pay upfront at the beginning of the season, so in like March they'll join, and then they get produce each week, a share of the harvest. I'm selling mostly to folks in DC, so maybe 25 miles is how far it goes, and I'm driving a truck full of 20 people's vegetables, and they just walk or bike over and get it. So I think that's one huge impact.
CSAs and farmers markets both support small farmers so they can keep their production on a smaller scale and avoid many of the fossil fuel intensive practices of large corporate farms.
Just one person with a couple acres. I use barely any tractors and barely any plastic, and it's just, I think the impact from resources is a lot less too.
Buying at smaller local markets helps eliminate other environmental impacts associated with large-scale grocery stores.
I think you have less packaging when you come here. You don't have all the plastic stores, you don't have all of the advertising, you don't have the facilities, you don't have the electricity, you don't have the heat, you don't have the cashiers, you don't have the conveyor belts, you don't have the asphalt parking lots. So I think those are probably just as important as just the actual food miles.
In quality, when food travels less to the consumer, then they're getting it fresher, and that makes a difference in the way it looks and the way it tastes.
Farmers markets also bring money to local economies.
Maybe 17% of every dollar goes to the farmer when you buy it at a grocery store, but when you're buying at a farmer's market, it's closer to 100%.
So it's fresher, it tastes better, and it supports the local economy. So it's more than just the footprint. It's an economic reason, it's a health reason, it's also a social reason. Because when you come to a market, you get to see your neighbors, children get to interact with each other, so it's a community building event.
People are making the connection between local food and climate change and just your carbon footprint as to how many miles has your food traveled. It's not strictly cut and dry, but I do think that this is a much more ecologically friendly way to eat and a much more eco-conscious, just a more conscious way to eat.
There seems to be this Costco mentality where people think, that they have to go buy overpackaged, produce from, Guatemala or out of season, in big quantities and bring it home, and then it gets wasted. I just think that's, something that people need to think that, that kind of purchasing is just not good for our planet.
What we eat and how we get it is a simple everyday matter that has a large impact on our planet. So eat locally and take a bite out of climate change.